Welcome to the Force Multiplier for Law Enforcement podcast with your host, Lorenzo Valdivia. This is a place where we discuss different factors that give law enforcement officers the ability to accomplish greater feats and tasks than they would without it. We will have unfiltered, candid conversations with those who have knowledge, know-how, and bring what they feel are these different types of variables to help keep our law enforcement on their top game. Enjoy today's show.
Welcome to Force Multiplier for Law Enforcement. I'm your host, Lorenzo Valdivia. Today, I am very excited for our guest, someone that I've respected and looked up to for a long time in the jiu-jitsu world, and someone that's going to bring something very valuable to law enforcement. We have two gentlemen with us. First one is Master Rickson Gracie, and we have Mr. Craig Husband. Gentlemen, welcome to Force Multiplier.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Awesome.
Great to be here with
you both coming on. I have your book here. Breathe was an amazing book. I treated it like a college book, and I've highlighted in it and written in it. And as I was reading the book, I said, man, this is something that would be amazing for law enforcement to talk about. And so I sent an email out, and you responded, and there's something you guys are working on. But before we get into that, Master Rickson, I know who you are. Those in the jiu-jitsu world know who you are, but we have a lot of listeners who do not practice jiu-jitsu and may not be familiar. So if you wouldn't mind giving yourself a little bit of an introduction about who you are, what you do to the listeners.
Sure. I'm Rickson Gracie from the traditional Jiu-Jitsu family, the Gracie Jiu Jitsu family, son of Gracie, the Grandmaster. And I spent all my life competing, training, teaching, dedicating my life to Jiu-Jitsu. And that's been a great journey for me, and of course to the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, to the growing process around the world. So it has been a very blessing life. At this point, I feel like I have to bring back, as always, my knowledge to the community, and especially talking today about the law enforcement community, which has a lot to grow, a lot to gain from the practice of a comprehensive jiu-jitsu practice. And I feel like I'm committed to do that. And I partner here with my dear friend and agent, Craig Husband, which is training with me in a consistent basis for the last 35 years. So we've been always, since we know each other, I try to really favor his knowledge in terms of giving him more comfortable to deal his life as an agent in different segments of the law enforcement. But as we discussed about this, as I've been teaching different agencies like sheriff departments, Navy SEALs, Delta Forces, and so on, different numerous law enforcement and military people with jiu-jitsu. But Craig has a different information because he's in a almost daily basis training with me and develop a different sense of knowledge. And in related to that, we felt like it's a very interesting aspect of jiu-jitsu which is being now offered to the law enforcement, which relies on more like an internal knowledge than actually the practical gun retention or arrestment control, because more and more the law enforcement has been suffering some pressure, and the ability to excel in their profession relies on not only the techniques they know, the theory they have, but also into the internal capacity for them to really be on time and precisely meant the perfect mindset to apply on this situation. So we come up with a comprehensive practice which allows the officers not only to have a perspective of a better result, but also to have a better life in terms of a much more, how am I going to say that, invisible aspects of their life they don't know and they're not in contact yet. But once they get exposed to that program, they start to realize how important little invisible details make a difference for their performance. So we are excited to bring this to the community, and definitely I'm believing in very positive results for the law enforcement.
Absolutely, and I'm very excited to talk about this and bring this out to law enforcement. And I look forward to, as we continue on with our conversation, talking about that program that you guys have developed and are working there in your local community. And Craig, if you wouldn't mind giving the listeners a little bit about your background, and you're a retired law enforcement officer, and we thank you for your years of service to our community and what you're continuing to do.
Thank you so much. I started my law enforcement career back in 1977, so it's been a long time. I've seen a lot of changes. I did 33 years with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. The Ventura County Sheriff's Department is a medium-sized county here in California. There's 58 counties, so we're about in the middle. We have 750 sworn deputies, about 2,000 general civilian employees, custody officers. So we oversee the jails, the courts, patrol for the unincorporated areas, patrol for 5 incorporated cities that we do by contract. All the things that go along with the Sheriff's Department. Throughout my career, I had a great opportunity to work a wide variety of assignments, starting in the jail like everybody else, and then working your way through patrol, SWAT. I spent many years working narcotics and major crimes. Eventually, I worked my way up through the ranks and retired as undersheriff of the department. I spent 11 years as undersheriff, and that was a great experience. Throughout that entire time, I continued to teach as a defensive tactics instructor at the academy. I had a passion for that. And before I started the Sheriff's Department, I'd been studying martial arts. I'd always had a passion for body movement. I was a baseball player, played in the minor leagues and hurt myself. And then, as I say, had to get a real job. That's when I joined the Sheriff's Department. And I'd been studying martial arts, and I thought it was pretty bad, like a lot of guys, until I was introduced to jiu-jitsu and this man in particular. And I thought I was learning when I took my first jiu-jitsu class how to fight or defend myself. I didn't realize I was taking a class to learn about life. And that's what's unique about Master Rickson Gracie's method of teaching, and everybody who's been exposed to it, from the first white belt to an advanced high-level black belt, they walk away just saying, wow, I wish I would have known this many years ago. In fact, the more knowledge you have, the more you appreciate what he's teaching. And it's kind of a reverse process, meaning most schools, martial arts in general, and jiu-jitsu schools teach techniques, and that's great. It's a great method. But he kind of used techniques not as the focus or the goal, but as a tool to teach you how to breathe, how to establish a good base, what connection feels like, and how to use weight distribution and those types of things. So technique was almost secondary to that. And then he said, Craig, as you're learning this, think about how this transfers to your everyday life, not just in a physical encounter, but in an encounter dealing with a difficult person, or I'm sure your listeners have never experienced this, but a difficult boss or subordinate, testifying in court, giving a interview, or getting ready for a promotional exam and being interviewed. So jiu-jitsu and the principles apply not just in a physical encounter, but more importantly, I found, in a day-to-day life.
Awesome. No, I think that's great. Go ahead, sir.
Let me make a little point here. He mentioned, in my career, in my life as a martial artist, I was not exactly finding myself as an athlete, as a sportsman, because my interaction with my opponents are pretty much no rules, no time limits, no weight divisions, different than today's sportive MMA or jiu-jitsu competitions. So I was preparing myself to fight in the devil. So I don't know who it is, what rules are for the format of the fight. So with all this unpredictability, I had to create myself a comfortable state which transcends the physicality, the preparation, the practice, the training hard, the sweating, the weightlifting, and the mindset for battle. I have also to create a mindset to give me control and peace of mind, like visualizations and strategies and things for me to rely on the mental aspect of my preparation. And also prepare myself and my spiritual mind to accept, to have hope, to have faith, to have the capacity to forgive, the capacity to be able to be ready to fight somebody I don't know and sleep well one day before the fight. So all this makes me searching all my life for elements to give me comfortable in hell. So based on that kind of situation, which transcends the sportive element of combat, I start to feel like after my journey as a fighter start to fading away, my physicality start to fading away, I felt how much support I have from things like which are required, were invisible before, like breathing, visualization, strategy, emotional control. And that's what kind of made me feel like, even though today I don't fight anymore, I have all the tools I need to have a perfect capacity to deal with the moment in terms of being calm enough, being sharp enough, being capable to strategize the best option, because part of your game in battle is how your mind feels, is how your control, your emotions are. And I felt at one point this is priority, because today the enemy can be coming through email or can be a COVID. So, and you have to know how to emotionally deal with the enemy. So that's why we come up with this comprehensive program, which involve a lot of breathing, a lot of sense of the invisible aspects within the practitioner. And that's definitely will change the way you see the problems, the pursue and a speed pursue against somebody, or waiting for getting to a house with a gun in your hands. So it's not about the techniques and the reinforcements and the weaponry the officers already have, the capacity to call the Air Force or whatever. So the officer today, he is able to require a lot of support, backups and weaponry, but it's important for them individually to feel peace inside. And that's what we try to accomplish, is through some kind of comprehensive protocols, the officers start to become more calm under pressure. He starts to become more sharp to make the right decisions at the right time, which is very relevant to the stressful world we have. You know, so this program goes and overlapping with other programs of can be instruct for cadets or police officers. Doesn't actually replace, but can overlap with all the practices, including the Gracie Jiu Jitsu gun retention and arrestment control techniques. But this particular 24-hour program involves more the ability to the practitioner understand himself and fix any internal problem they have as fast as possible, for him to be as sharper, as calm, as balanced possible, to not only be a great officer, but go back home and become a good father or mother and become successful in your career without stress, without heart attacks, without suicidal thoughts, without pressures, and become confused to write a report. So everything in the lives of officers is pressure. And if you know, in a very simple matters, how to, from inside out, relieve that pressure, It's amazing the difference that will make in their lives.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's one of the things that when I was reading your book that you wrote, you referred to a couple of situations where you were in, where you were going into a fight, and you had talked about using some of these breathing techniques to calm yourself down. You know, you would warm your body up, and then you would go in at a lower heart rate than your opponent, and you would always stay lower. And when you found those times of stress, you would calm yourself down through these various breathing techniques that you discuss early in the book. And as I was reading that, you know, kind of like what you're saying right now, is I thought, man, it would be amazing for law enforcement in as a complement to the defensive tactics, the physical piece of it, to be able to learn this stuff. And I started to, after I read the book, start watching videos of you talking about this, and the way that you breathe, and the hyperventilating and slowing yourself down when you're in middle of a competition. And I've worked on trying to apply some of that. And what I've found is that I'm more there than my opponent is, as far as being able to think things through and understand what's going on. And then I relate that to law enforcement and go, well, if I can do that here in a competition, how much more advantageous would this be to a law enforcement officer to be able to learn these techniques for those times when they're in a struggle with the subject, or just in a stressful situation throughout the daily task of law enforcement?
Yes, for a little demonstration of how this is interesting is, before Craig, I mean, he's been police officer forever, and having actions and getting into houses and different things, searching for drugs, whatever it is, you name it, he's been there. And we, in the middle of our experience together, he is in the beginning start to tell me how important for him is to add breathing. Like if he goes like into a house or something, before he was all nervous and become like all stressed before it happened and not able to sleep well. But now, I mean, not now, but at times he starts to develop better breathing. You can tell, Karen, please.
Yeah, you know, and I'm sure most police officers have experienced this. When you get into a difficult situation, either planned or unplanned, you start to experience tunnel vision. And I was experiencing that, and I said, you know, this isn't where I want to be. So I went to him and said, Craig, you know how to shoot a gun, you've been training, you're a good shot, you know all the tactics. Your problem is your internal climate, I'll call it. And how you change that is you breathe properly. And so I started working on that, and that problem went away. And so what I would do, and I was viewed kind of as an oddity in the beginning, but before we go do a search warrant, whether it was narcotics or SWAT, you get together in the morning, it's a wake me up, and you have your briefing, and then you have some downtime before you saddle up and hit a house or whatever. So everybody is visiting, you might have other agencies there, and you haven't seen a guy, so you're visiting, and I'm off in the corner focusing on my breathing. Just totally relaxed. And people are looking at me kind of oddly, but then we get into the van, everybody's piled in and dead silence. Your listeners know what I'm talking about. And you're on the way there, and everything changes. You can feel kind of a tenseness, a stress, and I'm still breathing. We hit the house. Everybody's running, sheriff's department search warrant, knocking on the door, flashbangs, whatever the situation calls for. House is empty. We clear it within 2 minutes, and I'm looking around, and highly trained guys, sweat is coming down their brow. And there's no dragons in the house, metaphorically speaking. There was nothing there. There was no threat. It was all in the mind. And I'm calm. I'm sure my blood pressure's up a little bit. I'm sure my heart rate's up a little bit. But I'm calm. Nothing's changed. So my ability, my awareness is expanded. And it's a trained thing. You have to learn it. You have to understand it's a skill that you learn and you work at, and how important it is. And law enforcement's a very dangerous profession. It's never been more dangerous than it is today.
Right.
you know, you can be struck down by a single bullet. More officers are killed in the line of duty than ever. Having said that, for me, when I was working, I accept that, and I go into dangerous situations. No fear, I mean, respect, but no fear per se to do my job. I would do it. The problem is, I learned, is not a big incident. It's the day-to-day stresses. You get up, you haven't had a good night's sleep because you're thinking about the day that's ahead. So you're already starting off negative. And then the alarm clock startles you out of your sleep. And then you're wearing an eye watch that goes off every 10 seconds. And all these are stimulants that trigger the sympathetic nervous system, which increases your fight and flight. And that just builds up in your system, the cortisol, and creates stress. And eventually, over time, leads to burnout. So the breathing, you know, I started focusing on breathing when I'm driving in my car on patrol or whatever. And I would tell officers, deputies, look, when you get a hot call or any call, don't pick up the mic right away and respond. Stress in your voice, you hear it in everybody else's voice. Could be we had an incident a couple years ago where many people were killed at a nightclub on an active shooter. I said, take one moment and take a couple of breaths and go. And you'll get there quicker, more efficiently, and better prepared than anybody else responding. And they'll feed off that positive energy that you're putting out, the calmness. And pretty soon it'll start to spread. And so that's what this type of training teaches. So it's not only for the physical, like the active shooter to respond, but it's in dealing with the day-to-day stress. Everybody has families and all the problems that come with that. You have difficult bosses, you have difficult subordinates, like I alluded to, and that's just part of life. Everybody has it. So by doing these breathing, you have to be like a snake, and every day shed the skin and start anew, so to speak. And these techniques, the visualization, the relaxation, the breathing, and there's more than one technique. There's 2 or 3 techniques depending on the situation. I feel they're easy to learn, but it requires discipline. You need to develop a habit every day of practicing. Every morning when I wake up, I spend a half hour in bed breathing. My wife is used to it now. She knows what's going on. She rolls over and goes back to sleep. She understands, but it makes a better day from the beginning.
Yes, something amazing about the breathing aspect, which people take for granted, is we all know how to breathe because we all are alive. Mm-hmm. Since you get a slap on your butt when you're born and you first cry, wah, 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 you start to breathe and then you go okay. But even though now we have a science-based theory for the program, because you can spend 7 days without food, you can spend 3 days without water, but 5 minutes without air, you're dead. So the efficiency and the necessity of constant airflow in your body is an emergency, something very much you have to do. You have to update all the time. You have to keep focus on your breathing, because a normal breath, which requires only, you use just half of the breath. Instead using the whole, you use just here. So knowing how to use the diaphragmatic breathing, know how to apply in different activities, no matter if you want to use the breathing to recovery and to hyperventilate in case you're high-performance athlete, or if you want to just bring calmness to your thinking, or sharpness to your shooting, or calmness for you to sleep if you need it. So the breathing can become a very important tool to connect, because what is interesting about is the brain and the heart are the only organs in the human body who giving and receiving information. And the lungs has a very important and potential to alter or to modify your brain and your lungs and your heart. So you can do a good hyperventilation you can really change the way you feel tired or the way you feel claustrophobic or panic. And also, with a good breathing system, you can bring positiveness to your mind. You can diminish anxiety, claustrophobic feelings, depression, suicidal thoughts. Anything which comes with negative mindset can be revitalized and energized by a perfect breathing. So knowing how to use your lungs is much more than just be alive. It's to be able to directly fix any problems in your heart done by the tiredness, or something coming in your emotional mindset. So using the proper breathing systems, like good singers. You cannot be a great singer if you don't know how to breathe. You cannot be a great diver if you don't know how to breathe. Now, my proposal is you cannot be a good human being if you don't know how to breathe, because you're just shallow. Everything is shallow. The way you perceive things are shallow. Your emotions are superficial. You don't have control of your internal gut feeling. You don't develop your intuition. So by a perfect process in your breathing, you expand your mind, you expand your heart, you expand the vision and the calmness for you to be as sharp as you can be, either to play with your kid or to resolve a murder situation, as a police officer, as a father, as a boss, as an employee. Better you breathe, better sharp you are.
Absolutely. And, you said something about clearing your, it helps to clear your mind and through a piece of the hyperventilating, right? Most people, when they hear hyperventilate, it's a bad thing. But you talk about how it's not a bad thing to use that to calm yourself down, to clear your thoughts out in those times.
Yeah, hyperventilation is when you just overbreathe to increase the amount of oxygen in your blood. If you're in that, like if you start to run and wait to get tired, to start to get a deeper air, you always tired. But as you start to run, you start to hyperventilate. If I just do hyperventilate and do nothing, I start to get dizzy from so much oxygen in my brain. If I go, for example, dive on a pool, like a 50 meters pool, I want to go as far as you can under the water. So I hyperventilate before I go. So I start to get dizzy just by hyperventilate. So when I get under the water, I feel like super fresh, able to exhale at least double the amount of length I will do if I don't hyperventilate. So if I'm in the middle of an action and I don't know how to hyperventilate, I'm going to get exhausted. I'm going to get the claustrophobic feeling I have to stop to deal with.
Right.
But if I know how to hyperventilate, I never get that edge of suffering or tiredness. I always keep my mind fresh. Even though I'm very active on my body, my brain, because sometimes if you don't know how to do it, you get into a very important effort or something. You start to getting tired a little bit, but you can do it, but you're still tired. Your brain starts to get damaged, less oxygen in your brain, so your capacity to be, your reflexes, your sharpness in understanding changes or strategizing diminish, because you operating here with a physicality who takes all the blood away from your brain, and your brain starts to fading. You see a lot of people, when they get tired, they start to become more like, what? They don't know exactly what's coming.
Correct.
But if you know how to hyperventilate, even when your muscles are acid lactic and you cannot even move anymore, your brain is still very sharp and fresh in order to cope with the situation. So know how to breathe is a must for anyone, especially for people who's under tension, under pressure, and they require physicality, but also mental sharpness.
Yes. Now let's talk a little bit more. You had made a comment earlier about this being a complement or an addition to a defensive tactics program that a agency might train their law enforcement officers, or that a law enforcement officer might continue their training with. And how does the breathing philosophies relate to defensive tactics, the program that you guys are creating, that it will help police officers save lives and mitigate stress?
I mean, Craig is the director of training for the Federation, which want to implement the practice. He will explain a little bit also about that. But just to give a little understanding of the process, you know, sometimes the enemy today coming through email. And you just touch the email and you read something and it really disturb you. Can be something very much, you know, tense. That news will change immediately the chemistry of your body. You're going to feel upset. You're going to feel, you know, somehow, you know, focus on that for a problem, but the problem will take over. If you know how to breathe, you can clear that. You can allow the problem to become in a shelf, waiting to be resolved, not exactly taking over your emotions and disturb you at the point you cannot even think anymore. So the idea of dealing with problems, physical, emotional, mental problems, is all related to how much you start to become more effective in the way you breathe. Because the breathing can really diminish the pressure, diminish the anxiety, diminish the claustrophobic feelings, and increase your sharpness, increase your patience, increase your capacity to overcome problems. So based on that, we develop a program who overlaps with, because normally in the academy, it's 60-hour program for the police officer becomes getting to the force. It's like an instructional 60-hour program for gun retention, harassment control, and so on. So we modified, we still have the 60-hour program, but a lot of people have in different formats, coming from a judo background, coming from Krav Maga background, coming from Jiu-Jitsu background. So all those 60-hour introduction to the cadet can come in from different technical segments. We create a 24-hour program to overlap with any other existing program, including the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu program. Because this will give you the idea of how to play yourself into the program, how your invisible power has to be brought alive, how you recognize your inner strength. Because if you don't understand your inner strength, it's very hard for you to be sharp to execute other things. So I felt like the most relevant knowledge the police officer or anyone has to have about themselves is not exactly the technique to be applied, it's not exactly to know how to gun to use, but be precise and calm enough to make a good shot or to make a good technique when it's coming, the time for it. So this 24-hour program, 3 days program, will give to the practitioner the sense of the ability to deal with themselves in a more precise way. And so on, everything you're going to learn after that will be easier to execute, will be better to be, you know, better understanding, better execution, and most of all, will give them the difference between being at work and letting go the uniform and go back home to being a father or a mother or somebody who just need to focus on the family and the attentions to be happy and food. So be able to disconnect from the pressure of the work. So by doing a proper breathing, you can rule your internal management and become much more sharp to be happy, much more sharp to fight stress, to minimize situations, and to be sharp in a hot pursuit or be able to make a kill. Whatever you have to do, you have to be much more in charge mentally. And that's what the proper breathing do for you. You want to complement something?
Yes. So in addition to the breathing, this program teaches what we call base. Some people might call it balance, but it's more than that. And it teaches weight distribution, how to put your body in correct angles so you don't have to use physical strength. You're aligning the bones correctly, so it's alignment. weight distribution and your balance. It's teaching you what connection is, and really that's a big thing in Rickson's Invisible Jiu-Jitsu. What it feels like to align your body and have someone push you and they can't move you, and you feel relaxed, and vice versa. You can move people pretty much effortlessly by using your body through proper alignment, the breathing, which is the foundational aspect. And I teach a lot of people from different disciplines, high-level guys. I'm not a threat. We're not a threat to them. We're here to help and supplement. And once they see that, they're very appreciative. You mean whatever movement I'm doing in my preferred art form is enhanced by doing this? Yeah, feel this, try this. Oh, wow, I didn't realize a block could do that. I still study weapons-based arts because it's kind of a gap between the empty hand art of jiu-jitsu and using a nightstick or an edged weapon. So when I work with people on that, I use the jiu-jitsu principles to enhance what they're doing. And, you know, they can take it or leave it, but in my experience, everybody loves it, and the more advanced they are, the more they appreciate it. A lot of them are doing some of it that they've developed through their art form, but they don't realize they're doing it until you point it out to them. And then that enhances their growth. So it's all about giving back. You know, I enjoyed a great career. It's a tough career, as everybody knows. You lose people along the way. I've lost a couple, 3 friends along the way. And, but all in all, I'm very grateful for the experiences I've had and meeting this man who, like I said, changed my life. To me, it was foundational for the career that I had and how I feel afterwards. How many law enforcement officers, 10 years, 15 years from retirement, that's all they're talking about. That's all they're thinking about. When I retire, I'm going to move somewhere else and I'm going to do this. My experience is, if you're unhappy right now and that's what you're thinking about, you're going to be unhappy after you retire. Nothing, a change of location, a change, taking up golf or whatever you enjoy doing now, isn't going to change how you feel. It has to happen right now, today, under the pressures that you're dealing with. Then when you retire, you'll feel good, you'll be healthy, and you can do whatever you want. If you want to move, move. If you don't, you know, whatever. So back to the point, this program is to enhance whatever any agency in the country and eventually internationally is doing. We're not a threat to that. We're here to help and to assist the growth of what you're doing.
And, you know, you had mentioned the invisible piece of this. I remember the first time I heard of this invisible jiu-jitsu word or this invisible thing that's there that we don't know about. You know, it sparked my curiosity and I started looking into it a little bit more. And then a few years ago, I met a mutual friend of Rickson's, Johnny Lee Smith, and he told me about training with you and learning this stuff. And, you know, then the questions came to him of, well, talk to me about this, help me understand this stuff. And, you know, he has a defensive tactics program he teaches in the Southeast United States, and he implements parts of invisible jiu-jitsu to these police officers. And I remember the first time I went in and trained with him, and he said, "Here, come in my guard, and I'm going to pull you down and don't let me." And I was like, "Well, I got a good guard, I got a good defense. You're not going to move me." And over, he moved me. And then he said, "Now let's switch roles, and you're going to do the same thing to me." And he was a wall. He was not movable, and I couldn't tell what he was doing. And I asked him, and, you know, he said, it's the invisible piece that you were asking about that you can't see. And since implementing some of that, and he talks about some breathing stuff that he learned from you, you know, it's really changed the way that I do things, and the way that I see things of that people don't see that's inside. And, you know, now I really understand that invisible piece as you guys talk about this.
Yeah, because the invisible is the way for you to feel. You know, you develop your senses. So I want to teach you something who you want to develop in your senses, the sense of, oh, that's make a difference. I don't believe it. Just changing the angle here will give you that much power. So it's something, if you see in a picture, you cannot see the difference. You cannot see if it's effort or not. But when you feel, based on a little change of the angle of your hips or a little weight distribution who's more forward or backward, you become solid rock. And it's not based on your strength or your physicality. It's based on a very visible change which transforms the situation on your side. So invisible is everything in the fight, in the connection, you still connected, but you don't see it. And then you feel, said, wow, but if I connect differently, I'm very weak. That's why that kind of approach, an officer, when he goes for a domestic disturbance situation, he has to approach, knock the door and see if everything's okay. And sometimes the guy come out of there, with some kind of attitude. If he's not sure his position invisibly will be correct, he can be he's in a threat situation because he don't know if his power, if his balance will handle some kind of crazy guy who just jump on him. But if he's invisibly strong because he knows he's being tested based on the angles, even the guy try to become strong and try to attack, he has a way to through the angles, through the position, through the base, be able to hold the action and be able to capitalize on it. So even though you're not showing yourself aggressive, being visibly prepared give you the chance of counter move or breathe in the situation, to be always in control, mentally, emotionally, and technically, to be ahead of the game and be able to just, do what you have to do without jeopardizing your emotional, your mental, become like, nervous. So
right.
It's a very powerful thing.
I want to add one comment to that. And because when we talk about invisible jiu-jitsu and connection, you've experienced it. I've experienced it. So I believe it, you believe it, but we're talking theoretically. So in the course, we have a very high instructor to student ratio of about 10-to-1 because they need to feel it. So they understand it. Once they feel it for the first time, then they're seeking it in every position.
Absolutely.
Recently, I had a student who's very small. She trains in jiu-jitsu. She's been doing it a long time. And I showed her how to defend against a rear naked choke, standing. And I said, look, turn your head down, bring your hips back. And she lifted a big guy effortlessly. And the look on her face, I said, first time you've really experienced jiu-jitsu in my mind. Never forget that feeling and replicate it. Do it again, do it again. See, it's not an accident. Now that's what you want to carry in every position that you're working on and replicate that. And it changes people's lives.
Absolutely. It changed mine. The first time that you'd released a module many years ago, and you talked about elements of invisible jiu-jitsu on it that I had picked up. And then when I trained with Johnny and he showed me this stuff, I was like, this is the stuff that I should have known, or I wish I would have known 5 years ago when I started jiu-jitsu journey. Like I would be a different person today than I am. And I had to go back and retrain myself on some bad habits that I had. And, I've shared the knowledge on with the younger belts that are trained with me, and, to try and help their journey before they get to where I was at and go, how come nobody ever told me about this? Because it really does change not just your jiu-jitsu game, but just the way you look at various different things.
Yes, because if you think about an egg, if you put the egg in the right position between your hands and you squeeze, you're not going to break it. If you crook it a little bit, you break it. This very easy. So you can try on the sink. But if you have in a perfect position, you cannot break. And I use this as a metaphor because anyone can be strong as an egg. If you know how to position yourself, the angles, you become unbreakable just because the leverage, the angle, the technique you have becomes more precise than your average opponent's strength. So the idea of believe in I can be an egg, but I can be unbreakable is crucial because you start to see for positions, for angles, for distances, which make you comfortable. You know, I just gonna punch you in the face if you give me the distance. It's not about my speed, it's about the distance I have. If you keep a proper distance, nothing's gonna happen. And if I try to get into a distance to attack you, you can intercept that distance and counter move to not get attacked. So if you're thinking ahead, if you're thinking with precision, with techniques, you always can be ahead of your game, even though you not become a great fighter, but you become comfortable to enhance your positions and to be able to counter move, to be able to do your job properly, and to be able to feel calm afterwards. So all this coming with a comprehensive understanding of your invisible powers.
Right. And, you know, in your book, it was towards the end of your book under the rebirth chapter, you had made a comment in here and I highlighted it because I thought that, you know, it was a very important piece for me to, that you talked about, you know, with the rest of the book, where you say that the mind has incredible potential, but you have to dig deep to discover it. And, you know, I think that's true. And what you're saying with this program is a lot of people, you know, they don't dig into stuff. They just take it for face value of what it is and they move on with it. But to truly understand what it is, you have to dig deep to unleash the potential of the mind.
Yes. And it's exactly because a lot of people, they don't have in their minds become a champion, become a high-performance athlete. So they don't require to use all the resources they have. And sometimes they go through life breathing poorly, visualizing poorly things, but you can separate that. Even though you're not physically a champion, you can become a champion and understand your mind and be able to reach your goals and seek for happiness, because happiness is not something who is stagnant. And if you're happy today, you're going to be happy all your life. No. You're happy today with something you accomplished today. 5 years from now, that's going to be meaningless. And you have some other focus to be focused on and be happy and keep happiness alive. So the strategy you have to use, the capacity you have to overcome problems, is all based on your mindset and your positiveness, and be capable to understand yourself and regulate yourself in a deeper level. You just can accomplish that in a fast mode if you know how to breathe, because through the lungs you can assess your calmness and you can assess your refreshment in your heart. So learning how to position yourself is very important, but learning how to be in control of your mind is more important. So through this comprehensive program, you become more capable to understand if your emotions go above the level, if your tiredness go above the level. So you start to regulate yourself before you get on the red. So breathing becomes a huge facilitator, because we are what we breathe. Before anything else, if you stop breathing now, 5 minutes from now, you're dead. So the importance of the flowing oxygen in the way you make it flow, you know, human beings, they born and they start to breathe like a shallow breath. Mm-hmm. And you see animals like dogs, and they breathe. They breathe with the diaphragm. So we have to relearn how to breathe in a very basic level, especially to function in stressful situations like police officers and other professions. So I highly recommend the understanding of the invisible, especially for law enforcement agents. But everyone should know more about it. Kids, older people, because that will bring an immense pleasure to fully connect with your body and start to become more comprehensive. The invisible start to become more comprehensive for you.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, Craig, you know, have you've trained this with law enforcement, this program, you know, and I'd just be curious with those law enforcement officers that you have trained that have utilized this, you know, what is some feedback that you've gotten from them and how it's impacted their career as a law enforcement officer?
I get so much positive feedback. I've had students, I've had students now for 25 years in Secret Service, FBI, they're all over the country. Every opportunity they come back, they want to train. They're actually part of this program. We're utilizing them as instructors. So it's been a great opportunity for me to get the knowledge out and for them to learn it and then experience the benefits of it, not only in terms of the physicality of saving their lives or being in situations and dealing with those, but again, they're moving up in the ranks in their various agencies, and every one of them. Now, these are highly motivated people to begin with, to get up at 6 in the morning earlier and come and train. You got to have some motivation to do that, but they see the benefit of it, and they see how it's life-changing for them. And over the past 20, 25 years, I've watched them have kids and, in some cases, grandkids. I've seen them progress through their careers and have great success. And it's a great group of people because the energy is always positive. Now, it doesn't mean their lives are perfect. Some have developmentally disabled kids, other problems that everybody faces, getting transferred to a different part of the country or a different part of the county, and dealing with all those challenges, modifying your lifestyle to accommodate that. Small examples, but you get what I mean. And without question, they always say, the things that you taught me, and I need to say it's not my material or my ideas. I have no original thoughts. I was given this, I call it a beautiful gift from this man. It's life-changing, and so I feel good when I'm able to share it. There's some selfishness on my part. I love training partners. I need people to train with, so it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, and we really enjoy it, so it's been very good.
The idea of having this program, we already been planning, but with the COVID, we delayed this for at least a year and a half. Now, with this problem is getting over, we're going to start doing seminars and certifying instructors all over. The first seminar we have, the first class workshop seminar we have, will be in September, but it's already sold out. But I love to see other people interested to join the force and start to become more comfortable. This is for police officers only. So it's not open for the great public. It's just for the instructors and the people from the law enforcement agencies, which I feel like is important for them to learn this before any bad guy.
No, and that's great. I'm definitely gonna have to look into it myself to get out there and bring it to this side of the United States to the law enforcement officers that I work with and in the department that I'm at. I think this is going to be a valuable asset to law enforcement. Something that is definitely going to complement what they do already, and it's going to help police officers just in their daily tasks and what they do. So we will link all of the description and how they can find information about the program in the description of this week's episode, and we'll also share it on our social media page there, so that law enforcement officers can find that. Anything else Anything else you gentlemen would like to share or say to the listeners, prior to closing out today?
Man, in my end, I'm very happy to be here and try to create this kind of special service for law enforcement, because we really need develop the best law enforcement agents possible and giving them the quality of life they need. So through this comprehensive program, they will feel happier, they will feel lighter, and they will feel sharper to execute their job. That's for sure. I guarantee that, because based on the same program, I feel at my best to go on in my career. And nothing can be more stressful than what I was planning for myself. So being a police officer with this support will be a great support for them to just follow up with. And I really recommend, and I'm looking forward to see there's most police officers involved in that kind of program for themselves to feel better and for the community to feel safer, and so on. So I'd like to thank you for the support of the community. I'd like to thank Greg to be on that with me as a director of the training for law enforcement program. And I'm looking forward to just keep serving the officers because they need everything I can do to support their cause. And we need better and more prepared officers on the streets, so it's all for the good.
Absolutely.
Thank you for what you're doing for the law enforcement community. It's a great service and it's well needed. Thank you.
Awesome. And again, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming on. When I sent the email out and I was like, oh, I'll never hear from Rickson. He's not gonna, he has a lot of stuff going on, but that you responded and you care so much about law enforcement, from me and other law enforcement officers, we thank you gentlemen for that. I look forward to learning more about this and releasing this for law enforcement to hear about this program. I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be great. I look forward to hopefully one day being able to get out and get to one of these courses and bring it out to our law enforcement out here in the Midwest, out in Missouri and surrounding areas. So again, gentlemen, I appreciate it. I thank you for coming on. It was truly an honor of mine to be able to interview and talk to and receive some knowledge from gentlemen of your stature and your knowledge that you've gained over all the years. As we do every week, we remind our listeners to get out there and be better for themselves, be better for their family, be better for their friends, and most importantly, to be better for those that they interact with daily in their communities.
Definitely. Thank you, brother. Have a good one.
That's it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend so you never miss an episode of Force Multiplier for Law Enforcement. Another way that can help us grow and reach more listeners and agencies is by leaving us a review. They are read and the feedback is taken on how to make this podcast even better to reach our community and different law enforcement agencies.